join me for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What about O'Canada? Yeah,
Might as well.
Is anyone here O'Canada?
Yeah. Shoot a few baskets.
Welcome to the school board meeting for School Town of Speedway. May the 10th, 2016. We'll be working from an agenda that's posted in the back of the room with 16 items. We'll start with item number 1 to approve the minutes from April 12th, 2016. Laura?
I move that we approve the minutes from the April meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from April 12th. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0. Item 2, oh, we better sign them.
Too fast here.
Even though I wasn't here.
Yeah, you go ahead and
Pictures back.
so, this means you trust your colleagues.
TLA, definitely.
Been a while.
Yeah.
Too bad I did it.
Did you effectively get all that business taken care of? Taxes and everything?
Yeah. Except I had to pay state taxes. This will be the last time, because they sold their house last year. They lost it.
Minutes are signed.
We'll move on to item 2, approve school board policy regarding the collection and forgiveness of debt.
And we went through this policy in detail last month. My recommendation is that you approve the policy as presented.
Madam President, I move that we approve the school board policy regarding the collection and forgiveness of debt.
Thank you,
I'll
Mr.
second.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We have a motion and a second to approve the board policy regarding the collection and forgiveness of debt. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0. Move to item 3, approve school board policy regarding internal controls.
And again, we worked through this, had just a few minor corrections in terms of punctuation and putting things together, but the recommendation is to approve this as it's presented this evening.
Laura?
I move that we approve the policy regarding the internal controls.
Is there a second?
Mr. Second.
Mr. Smith?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the school board policy regarding internal controls. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0. Item 4, approve continued participation in the federal summer food service program.
And this is now, I think, about the 6th year that we participated in the food service program for the summer. We were up to averaging over 150 children coming in for lunches, and I recommend that we continue participation. In addition to the contracts, which I'll sign after your approval, is also the announcement that we have open sites and through the month of June. So we're ready to go with your approval on this participation.
Mr. Smith?
I will move that we approve to continue participation in the federal summer foods program.
Thank you. Ms. Gay?
Sorry.
Yeah, we're fighting over it tonight. We have a motion and a second to approve the participation in the federal summer food service program. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0. Item 5, approve early literacy grant.
And what I'm asking you to do is retroactively accept grants totaling $20,375 to work with early literacy. These came through in the middle of spring break, and I'm hoping that you'll accept those based upon the fact that I accepted them. They're actually for Allison Elementary School,
Fisher and Newbie.
Fisher and Newbie, and the detailed plan is exactly as we've done in the past with early literacy. We are working towards helping our students at their youngest age. So I'm hoping you'll retroactively accept $20,000 $375 for early literacy from the state.
Mr. Gay?
I move that we approve the early literacy grant.
Thank you. Dr. Reed, we have a motion and a second to approve the early literacy grant. Is there any discussion? Motion carried. All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0. Sorry about that. Item 6, present the resolution regarding the administration of Affordable Care Act.
And this is just being presented tonight to begin discussion. We have a conflict in the state of Indiana. The federal government with the Affordable Care Act is through the Internal Revenue Service has put in a series of penalties should an error be made or should a school corporation consciously decide not to meet the standards of that act. Some school corporations, not Speedway, may make a determination not to meet the standards of the act and accept the penalty. Other school corporations, like Speedway, we are doing our absolute best to implement this. We want people to have insurance. We have even actually taken the standard of 30 hours being full-time. Any employees near that, we check every 6 months. We offer an affordable insurance plan. But the key is that we have affordable care. It cannot cost more than 9.5% of their income. It has to be a true health care plan, insurance, which we believe we've met both those standards, but in the event, and it has to be offered to people who are qualified. If we would make an error and miss someone, that could result in a penalty as much as $3,000 per employee. If in good faith we make that error, then that, because the federal government could impose the penalty, but the state says school corporation, unless they have a resolution, can't pay that penalty, which essentially makes myself responsible for that error and what comes with it. That's a pretty terrifying thing when you start thinking about it. And so Mr. Jim Hamilton of Bose McKinney, who's considered an expert, has been working with schools, and what they've done is develop, and they've shared with us, they've actually filled in a resolution which would essentially say that if in good faith we as a board choose not to provide insurance, we will pay that penalty. And if in good faith our agents, our employees, in good faith are attempting to implement the policy and should make a mistake, we'll pay the penalty. So I'm not asking you to approve this, I'm asking you to think about this. Frankly, until the state passed a law saying that unless a board authorizes this, the employee, that happened about a year ago, and the federal, an example of federal acts and state acts not meshing together. So what I'd ask you to do is take a good look at this. I'm especially asking our attorney on the board to take a good look at this and see if there's anything in here that might be, because I'd like to maybe bring this back for consideration. But I also don't want to put you in the standpoint of saying, no, we're not going to do this, because if you're not inclined to do this, we won't bring it back. Because frankly, both myself and the treasurer, who's essentially my agent, are doing our best. Yeah, we don't want to not have someone have insurance. What I most become concerned about is someone who might be filling the role of substitute teacher and coach, and all of a sudden they actually have hours that we're expecting. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I did want to present, but there's no action that I'm seeking or recommending.
Discussion on that, or we'll move on, and we will move to item number 7, which is to present the athletic handbook for 2016-17 school year.
And this is one of, I think, 3 nights in the spring where Speedway High School doesn't have any home activities, and this was an opportunity to not have the athletic director here till 9 o'clock, so I told him I would bring these forward for you. He understands that there probably won't be action, but he's recommending 2 changes in the proposed handbook. Number 1 is actually the last sentence of the section regarding self-reporting regarding substance abuse. We want to add the last sentence. This clause may be only used to reduce a first offense penalty. Because we had an incident where someone self-reported, but it was a second offense penalty, and that's a pretty big, first offense is 30% of or 50% of a season, but it can be reduced to 25% by coming forward. On a second offense, the penalty is a full season, a year, and self-reporting can reduce to 50%. Logic is that we simply miss this. We figure that a person who's been caught once and is on a second offense shouldn't be given the opportunity to self-report and reduce the penalty. They can still self-report. It's just that we don't see self-reporting in the case of a second-time offender being a noble act. So, and then finally, the second change is just the bylaw according to concerning practices. It used to be bylaw C-94, and it's changed to bylaw 9-14.
Isn't the biggest part of the, maybe you said this, maybe I was
Maybe
zoned
I'm
out. The biggest part of the new self-report clause, that the timeframe's taken out of it?
Yeah, well, yeah.
And I have a concern about that.
This is my miss, okay? So I don't have a good answer.
And here's my concern. I'm guessing, I think that, well, I guess it doesn't matter why I think it happened. I think that, to me, it would be worth knowing why and perhaps revisiting why the change from 24 hours to, this seems to me to beg, let me see if I can game the system. Let me sit back and wait and see. Do I think someone's going to report it? Do I not? And if so, all I have to do is get in there beforehand. And if it looks like this is all going to not be found out, then I'm skating along. I'm not going to open my mouth. But ooh, whoops! It looks like people are talking about it. Let me get in there. Let me make a phone call, send a text, report first. When we used to have, and I think that there's some questions about, you know, the calculation of 24 hours and how that works, and I get that, but I'm wondering if there isn't a solution that doesn't allow students to sit. I mean, in theory, right? I mean, I could be out.
You've hit it right on the head. That is what just listening to what you've said, the issue arose from what does 24 hours mean when it's Friday night versus a Saturday, a Sunday. I mean,
an easy thing that I thought is, you know, in a lot of business and corporate sorts of, and certainly in the law, we consider, you know, certain days as days and other days aren't. And so, you know, I think it's very common that people would say business days. And that doesn't, so
That
I don't
means
know why
Monday
we
through
couldn't.
Friday,
I
not
don't
a
know why we
holiday.
couldn't say school day and have, you know, I don't know. I'm just not comfortable with no time frame.
Yeah,
And
that's
big party on September 15th and October 2nd. Ooh, it's come up again. I better get in there and report myself.
And you've hit exactly what the issue was. And yes, let me reconvene and say, let's think about this, because while the specific 24 hours may have been too limiting, giving the chance that this happens on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and people aren't da-da-da-da,
Right.
but just saying before we da-da-da-da-da makes it very wide open. And so how do we come to terms that are reasonable?
Well, and not only that, I don't really think we want the incentive to be report before someone tells on you, which is what this essentially says. I think we want it to be, you've done wrong, you realize it, report, which is, you know, I mean, I knew I did wrong at 2 a.m. that night, so I ought to have some immediate need to fess up to that, not let me sit and see if I would be caught.
I can definitely that's definitely, and I'm not sure what the solution is, but let's kick it around a little.
And it's not an easy thing, because when you give them 24 hours, okay, I know I was at a party last night with Terry, and I called Terry and
Again?
said, I reported, and so you better report if you don't want to be, because we got to do this within 24 hours. I'm not sure that having a time frame is, I mean, the same thing would happen there. I'm at a party with 10 people, and I call all 9 of them after I self-report and say, you better do it within the next 24 hours, because I did, and they know who's there. So I'm not sure saying 24 hours. I mean, I totally agree with what Laura has said. You ought to report because you know you did something wrong. Before somebody finds out I was there, I better let somebody know I was there. I don't know.
I have less of a problem, though. I mean, I think, I'm not sure we can avoid that reality. And I have less of a problem when that's a smaller window, when it's, like that immediate, I mean, I don't know how we can ever avoid, unless we just simply say, the first person to call is the only one who, or, I don't know, but we can keep kicking it around. I mean, we all can.
I understand and didn't think about that, and so we'll sit around and talk about that, and we'll have this discussion and invite, the people who deal with this are school administrators, and they're comfortable coming into a meeting and thinking through this, but I think the last sentence is still very important.
Yes.
That I don't see any
Yeah, I
value in
agree.
self-reporting a second offense, and that was what I focused on. But the reality is the time frame, and how do we get that to a point that we are giving a reasonable opportunity to report? So that's why we talk about these things.
On the second one, what's the definition of regularly?
Well,
And there's a lot of word change. It was in there last year, but that kind of, knowing how the legislature writes laws and they don't define terms, I assume that somewhere the ISHA has defined what regularly is.
I'm guessing it's in bylaw 914, but I'll check that. According to bylaw 914, an athlete shall regularly attend scheduled practice sessions to be, what the old rule that we knew as coaches where you had to have 10 practices.
I think that's still true.
And so then that might be in
But
the
that's at the
bylaw.
beginning.
Point number 2.
Yeah.
Athlete must complete 10 consecutive organized practice and such order before they comply.
Well, that may be, point 2 may be the definition of regularly attend.
Okay.
But let me check.
And they also need to correct this bylaw by space law, and that's correct on here.
It should be a hyphen.
It should be hyphen. I assume that correction would be made anyway.
Thank you.
Item 8, authorize the execution of teacher contracts and hourly employment for 2016 summer school.
In good faith, on today, May 10th, we believe these are going to be our summer school classes and the amount of hours that we're going to have. So we're asking you to authorize that we issue contracts based on this set of facts, i.e. Jeannie Buck will have enough students for a class, and in fact, it'll meet for this many hours, and that'll be the amount. We all know that on May 10th, these things change before the first day of summer school. A student moves, a student plan, a class may not be offered. But because these people will be starting these classes and actually be getting their first pay before you meet again, we will bring you firm numbers. We hope that these are exactly firm, but we're asking you to authorize us to issue contracts as long as these conditions are met.
I have a question. On the junior high enrichment, are those the dates June 6th to 17th, or are they the 6th to the 30th? Is it 4 hours?
They actually,
mean, it says 4
the
hours
first
now.
time I brought to you, it was 4 hours daily, but then after they worked with a little bit, they decided that to do it longer, this June 6th to the June 30th
So
at
it's
2
2
hours.
hours daily for the longer
Yeah,
time?
it still adds up to 40 hours,
Right,
but they thought 4
right.
hours at a time was too much. Yeah,
So the changes
So
in the
June
date, June
6th to
6th to
June
June
30th.
30th.
right, next to the 40 hours, so
Okay.
the top should be 6
Oh,
to
yeah.
30. 6 to 27.
So our recommendation, you authorize us to enter into contracts based upon this data.
Mr. Smith?
I will move that we authorize the execution of teacher contracts, hourly employment for summer school programs.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Day. We have a motion motion and a second to authorize the execution of teacher contracts and hourly employment for 2016 summer school programs. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0. Item 9, report regarding textbook selection and textbook supply fees for 2016-17 school year.
I will ask Ms. Bach.
Okay, this was probably the most exciting textbook adoption we've ever done, because when you have a core subject like mathematics, you usually base what you're going to do in text based on what the state standards are and what the assessment is. And as you know, last year's assessment, we still didn't have it back until almost December, and we still haven't seen this. They usually scan the student protocols and let us see those. We haven't gotten those. So we had to do a lot to think about how can we best position our students to have the materials that they need for math. So elementary-wise, we involved the entire, instead of a smaller committee representing the grades and coming back and forth, we involved everybody in that process. And the top 2 companies that we were looking at were based on Indiana standards. There were other companies that had great materials, but not necessarily tied to our standards. So for math adoption, we're recommending Everyday Math for kindergarten, and Pearson's Envision for grades 2 to 5. And I want to just comment on that just a minute. Our kindergarten teachers are really doing an awesome job at making sure that our full-day kindergarten is challenging for all students, and also meeting the needs of those who this is their first school experience. So Everyday Math is high on really intense problem solving, and our first grade teachers thought that would well position those kindergartners when they come to first grade. However, because of the mobility of our grades 1 through 6 actually, we decided that Envision, which Pearson is the company we're currently using, this is just an updated one based on the Indiana standards. And then when we reviewed our math scores last year, our 6th grade scores were the most concerning, because we knew we were doing best practices, but our scores were lower than what we anticipated them being, and without having those tests back, and different schools had different forms of the test, so it was really hard to know exactly how best to hone in on that. So we decided that one option would be to have our 6th grade adopt the same series as our junior high, and that way it made a really smooth transition for them, as well as just raising the bar a little bit for our 6th graders and for our teachers. So kudos to all the teachers that worked on that adoption and our administrators. So 6th grade will have the same. They're going to do McGraw-Hill along with the junior high. And within the junior high course, then they looked at to make sure that they got the materials that were tied best to Indiana standards as well. So we think we have something really solid there that will lead itself to a lot of professional development. And then at the high school, McGraw-Hill was the top runner for Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and Pre-Calculus, and then Pearson for the quantitative reasoning and quantitative reasoning and trigonometry. So I included there for you the process. We had committees at all levels, and the teachers and parents reviewed materials, and that's all signed off for you, and that's a summation of the math. Then, as you know, we did not adopt Spanish. We delayed that, and we're really looking at adding some Chromebooks that are available and some technology available to the Spanish department. So this looked like a good year to make sure that they had resources that would support the instruction with technology. So they asked if they could adopt. They worked with the junior high, because we do have Spanish 1 at the junior high, and so they've adopted McGraw-Hill, recommending McGraw-Hill for Spanish 1, 2, and 3, and I have a sign-off sheet there of the people involved in that.
If that's being thought about in terms of some computer-based stuff, the fact that it's a 2012 edition?
Right, and there wasn't anything more current than that, and with they felt like that was still worth it. The difference that they gained from that was still worth it, and the price here does include that students would have access to a hard copy, so that students would not be able to say, well, oh, I can't do whatever because I don't have the resources. And usually I don't bring you the AP books, but I thought that, not necessarily for adoption, but at least for you to get a look at the new courses that we're adding, and because of that, new text. And the price of those books is as you add higher level courses, prices of the books are higher too. So we worked diligently to get the resources that go with that, so kids would have the text, but teachers would also have the support materials to go with it. And that just lists the courses that we're adding, and then the update on the calculus AP. Do you have any questions?
If any of you'd like to take that calculus book home, we can get one for you, just to keep with you for reference.
For all the calculus you use in life?
Yes, exactly.
So probably you have questions about fees, and so I've included a proposed book and paper fee. Obviously, at the junior high and high school, it depends on the courses that they're taking. So this, as we've done in past, shows you the kindergarten through 9th, 12th grade for the paper fee, and then for the book fee. So basically, grades 3 through 6 are going up about $7 or $8. Grades 1 and 2 actually went down with the recommendation on the new adoption. They both went down by $12, and that's because of, the books were cheaper. And kindergarten went up slightly, but we really felt like for the amount of materials that they have exposure to and the experiences that they're going to have, that the teachers felt strongly that that would be beneficial.
Remind me what the paper fee covers.
Go ahead, Peggy.
Okay, we actually, we give parents a list if they'd like to see a list of what that covers, but basically we want to make sure that we're not spending any time where students don't have, I don't have any paper, I don't have a pen, I don't have paper, and then whatever additional money is left within that is, there's by grade level. Some grade levels get rulers, some get scissors, some get
Essentially, we don't send our kids to the department
That's what
store
I
with
was
a
going to say,
list
so
of
they don't have a list of school supplies you go get. You basically come and we give them to them with this fee.
everything you need is here.
Okay.
And we understand that is at times, it takes away one of those wonderful back-to-school experiences, but we remind them that you don't have to have that experience, and maybe it's not as wonderful fighting for that last ream of paper, and your child's always going to have paper, pencil, ruler, crayon, everything
So it's
they
all
need
that
at
glue
school.
sticks, crayons, the
Everything,
markers, the whole-
we don't ask them to bring another thing. $25, and they've got their year.
they need to take care of it, obviously, if you lose 12 pencils, however
Yeah.
many. But any of our schools, if the parent wants to see what that fee includes, we have a printout of what it includes. And because we can do discounted buying for buying in bulk, it's a pretty good option.
It's the parent of the first one who misses it. When they get to the second and third, they welcome it. All they have to do it is once or twice, and when they find out what we can buy for their child for that $25 with group buying. But if it ever gets to a point that they say, no, we want that experience again, we can take off that paper fee and go. We think it's going to harm learning. We think we're going to spend more time trying to find a pencil.
Right.
But we understand we are where we work. But having seen that, the recommendation would be that we adopt the textbooks and the fees as presented.
Mr. Gay?
I move that we adopt the textbook and the fees as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We have a motion and a second to adopt the textbook selection and textbook fees as presented. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0. I'll just add thank you to all this long list. I think we should all acknowledge all these people that have spent a lot of time and hours and energy selecting all these textbooks, because that is a job.
I will pass that on.
That is a job. Item 10, approve the 2016-17 employment contracts for homeschool advisors, graduation coaches, and nurses.
And you have a recommendation. There's these professionals, although not part of the teacher bargaining unit, we're recommending about a 4.5% raise, nothing higher than 5%. The great thing about what you've done for us is 4 of these 6 people on this list have been in these positions now for 3-4 plus years. This used to kind of be our revolving door. It's in my notes.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Notes. But the recommendation is that you would approve these salaries as presented. Some of them have been here 10 years.
I've got it in here, I just covered them, I put something in front of me. Dr. Reed?
Madam President, I move that we approve the employment contracts for the homeschool advisors, graduation coaches, and nurse.
Thank
Do
you.
you want to do those?
All those.
Okay.
Mr.
I'll
Smith?
second.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the 2016-17 employment contracts for homeschool advisors, graduation coaches, and the nurse. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0. Item 11, present the budget development calendar for 2016-17.
Yeah, 2000, for 16 pay into 17, and this calendar has not changed greatly. The key thing, you of course control all aspects of the budget, but the things you have to take action on are a capital projects plan. On Tuesday, July 12th, at the regular July meeting, we will present the capital projects fund plan and ask for your approval to advertise that. It'll be advertised at the end of July and in August, and then on August 9th, we would conduct a public hearing and then hopefully adopt that budget on August 23rd. That's the reason why we have 2 meetings in August. It's also a good time because if we have any late personnel. And then once we publish the adopted plan, we'll deliver things to the town and to the DLGF. And that's an easier task now because we enter it into Gateway into a computer. Likewise, the budget process, as you know, we'll present on July 12th a general budget which will include the capital projects plan as a larger part, and then present all the budget forms to you again on August 9th in their completed form. Then on Tuesday the 23rd, we hopefully will have you approve the budget at the board level to be taken forward to the town, and then we'll deliver those. And there will be a financial meeting, but I just want to make you aware that things will be relatively routine. Typically 3 meetings, 1 in July, 2 in August, that we go through the budget. Meets all, this actually exceeds the standards. The state has actually backed it up, but we've been doing this a long time, and there's no reason we can't get it done in July.
Does the new law allow you to, you don't have to publish it in the Star, you could publish it in the local paper?
Well, no, we are still going to have to
Okay.
publish in the Star because our local paper doesn't meet the minimum circulation.
Okay.
But we do publish much less in the Star.
Okay.
We publish a summary page as opposed to 9 or 10 smaller pages.
Okay.
So what the state's done has made this a little bit easier for us, a little less expensive. But there's not, all of you now will only be going through, what, your 9th, 10th, as much as 20th time, and the fact of the matter is the school budget just doesn't change. It is a process, the numbers change, the process is the same.
Is there any discussion? We'll move to item 12, acknowledge grants received.
And Madam President, I would recommend that you accept by consensus, as you look at the board, $103,954.39 worth of grants and awards.
Let's say we will accept that by consensus. Item 13 is a resignation.
I recommend that you accept the letter of resignation for the purpose of retirement from Miss Dana Ramberg. She has written a wonderful letter. She now has personal obligations. It's time for her to be in charge of a little bit smaller class, actually in this case parents. And Dana has been with us a great deal, and I would dare say had one of her best years this year, and she'll be missed. Like so many other teachers, I had 2 parents, one during last month. I've had a lot of contact with the public who specifically wanted to bring up Miss Randberg and the great thing she did, and that we should never forget all kids are served at Speedway. So I'd recommend you accept Miss Randberg's resignation for retirement.
Mr. Smith?
I will move that we accept the resignation of Dana Ramberg.
Thank you. Dr. Reed? So we have a motion and a second to accept the resignation of Dana Ramberg for purpose of retirement. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0. And item 14 is employment recommendations.
And our recommendation would be that we employ Miss Roshonda Brown as a custodian at the junior high school, working an evening shift. This position was previously filled by Mr. Gerald States, who resigned back in the end of March. In addition to employing Miss Brown, we'd also ask that you accept Matthew Hamilton as a high school soccer coach volunteer, Matthew Burke as a high school baseball coach volunteer, and Robert Oath as a high school boys soccer coach volunteer. And I can report to you, I see the volunteers out there regularly running the high school players across the field. So.
Pleasure.
I move that we, looking at here, the employment recommendations of Roshonda Brown, Matthew Hamilton, Matthew Burke, and Robert Oath. Is it Oath?
Oath.
Yeah.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the employment recommendations as presented. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0, and I'm just going to add that it's kind of fun to see these Speedway High School graduates coming back to volunteer. I'm sure most of them are parents too, but it's kind of nice to see them coming back.
If I would have said Bob Oath, people would have known right away.
Right. Well, item 15 is to recognize our visitors. Do you have any additional information?
Just would want to report that we're getting busy for the races and looking forward to things coming. This is a unique year. We have seen more inquiries about parking. We heard as early as today that there will likely be people wanting to park in the facilities for Carburation Day. To that end, that is not a teacher work day. It is a day that is a day that we, many of the staff, the administrators, secretaries, and custodians are here. Given that we were expecting the largest crowd that we're going to have, we're going to be wrapping up commencement on Thursday. Would the board consider the opportunity of this one time designating, for lack of a better term, Carburation Day as a paid holiday for the support staff and administration?
Yes.
Well, then okay, it would be my recommendation that you designate for those contracted employees who are generally here on Carburation Day, that this be a paid legal holiday on that day.
Mr.
I will
Smith?
move that May 27th, Friday, be made a paid holiday for administrators and uncertified staff.
Thank you. Mr. Gay, we have a motion and a second to authorize May 27th as a paid holiday for our administrators and our non-certified staff. Is there any discussion on that? All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0.
I think you'll probably get more cars on race day too, because
Yes.
our church is already sold completely out.
Wow.
And he sent 20 of them back this week.
Well, that's good. That's
And
good.
you get down there real close, and IMS has really jacked up the price like $100. So I have a feeling there'll be more parking out here.
Good for us.
Thank you.
Mr.
We will.
Smith has an addition here.
I just wanted to, at the close of this meeting, publicly thank you, Mr. Hull, for all your work with the referendum. I know Adam Gonzalez was the head of that committee that did it. I know you all spent a lot of time. As importantly, I want to make another example of this town and how they believe in our people being educated. With the vote being 90% to 10%, I imagine that's unequaled anywhere. Part of that's due to your work, much of it is, I'm sure, but also it's a message to our students that this town cares whether they're educated or not. And congratulations goes to the town as well.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, make no mistake, there was a group of concerned people who did this. I'm your agent. I'm the one person who can talk about that, and I can't do what I do unless you empower me to do that. But the message is simple, and rest assured that we know as a school system this is a sacred trust, and our work towards the future started the next day. we all had the advantage. Were we reminded at the top 10 dinner that this business is all about relationships every time? And we are in that business, and we will continue to be in that business and strive to meet the expectations of the community. So, but you give us the opportunity to do that. And likewise, the appreciation has been expressed by the people who work here that they appreciate that. So, thank you. Accept.
We'll sign claims. Thank you.